Welcome to the Driven Moms Answering Adversity interview series, Stories of Success Through Setbacks from Mom Elevated. Together, we can shine a light on how normal challenges and struggles are, along with how we can overcome and rise above them. Today, I'm so excited. We have Georgena to share her story with us. So, if you wouldn't mind, would you briefly tell us about your story?
The grief story or the mom story?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Okie dokie. All right. Well, I was always a working mother. I loved working as a speech language pathologist and went on to create a business. We served 20 nursing homes and 4 rural hospitals and provided speech pathology and occupational therapy services in rural Nebraska. And it was really exciting because we brought occupational therapy to that part of the world. So that was wonderful. And the latter part of that time, in less than 4 years, 5 people in my family died. My brother, my mother, my father, my father-in-law, and my teenage son, Reed. And it was his death that brought me to my knees. 3 of the deaths were sudden, no goodbye, and 2 were illnesses where we were in that anticipatory grief. So I took time off after Reed died. I didn't with the others, but I did after Reed died. And looking back, I'm very glad that I had the freedom and gave myself that grace.
Which is very fitting now that you are Georgena Grace.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so,
yes.
That's incredible. I mean, I knew parts of that story, obviously, but it's so fascinating to hear even just a little more of the tidbits,
Yes.
and get more of a glimpse behind that. So,
Mhm.
with all of that, obviously, that's a lot of adversity to have to
Yes.
rise above in that such a short a time. How did you really go about dealing with that and handling it? And where did it lead you? Obviously, it led you to where you're at. So,
Aha. The morning that Reed died, I left his body at the hospital, and his dad was there waiting for the transplant team to drive up because we were in rural Nebraska and they had to come from Lincoln, Nebraska, the capital. And our minister took us home. And I remember very clearly standing at the patio door as Dawn's fingers just pulled away that darkness of the worst night of my life. And I said to Reverend Tom, just like the sun comes up every morning, I'll move through and beyond this grief. Now, it's been 25 years ago that happened. And I can look back now, Jessica, and realize that that was way beyond me. That was some kind of guidance that came through that was the resilience that is the truth of every single one of us, actually the well-being we all have within. And so we were in raw grief for 8 weeks. And what raw grief is for your listeners is that's where you're crying 24/7, except when you're sleeping. And I was very fortunate I could sleep. And you're thinking about that person in the event over and over again. And I must say to our audience, Reed died impulsively. So it was that, oh, if only I'd taken his hand, if only. So there was all of that. And then I went into fragile grief and I stayed there for years simply because I was not self-compassionate. I did not give myself grace. I kept doing the what if, what if, what if. And that's what those of us who are bereaved by suicide often do. Reed was so embarrassed he wanted to die, and he did. He literally lost face because he was kicked off the basketball team and banned from school for 3 days. And he'd never failed publicly, and he was one of those stars. And he was only 15 and a half. So what I began doing is it had been set in place that I was going to take this training. It was a month before Reed died that I decided, oh yes, this is the next right answer for me as a speech language pathologist, to learn to listen with my body as a listening instrument and learn to hold people fully clothed with their shoulder between my hands, with their hip between my hands, with their knee between my hands, so I could deeply listen and be there to melt the armor in their body. Well, that was put in place. So off I trotted to go become a certified Rubenfeld synergist in the Rubenfeld Synergy Method on November 1st of 1998. Reed died January 24th. So here I was going off to Canada, and the training was 4 years long. It was very intense. We had 3 modules every year and then 3 regionals every year. But over time, I learned to listen. I learned to listen beyond how I ever knew I could listen. And so that's why I do what I do today. And just before I met with you, I started with a brand new client who's not even 30 years old, who had a brain tumor removed. And so the grief of that diagnosis was what we were dealing with today.
That's incredible. How fortunate that you had already signed up for that as well, because that's such a pivotal moment, I feel, in your own grief even, because that seems so soon after you had lost, your own son, after so many other losses as well.
Mhm.
That did it feel almost like, well, I have to do this because it's the universe speaking to me, like this is for sure.
Absolutely. Because in March of 1994, 3 months before my brother Mark died of suicide because of his mental illness diagnosis, I was sitting with a group of women from Norfolk at 6:30 in the morning. And we were all leaders in the community. That was why we had to meet at such a ungodly hour. It was dark. And we were talking about what we wanted our careers to be.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, it was like a lightning bolt came through me, Jessica. And it was, I want to be a better listener. I have never had in all my training, because I had an undergraduate and a graduate degree as a speech pathologist, I've never had a course in listening.
Huh.
And my friend Diane Blinn had been at Esalen between Christmas and New Year's in 1997, working with Alana Rubenfeld. And she came home and gave me the brochure. And she said, I think this might be the answer to your listening.
That's beautiful. That's incredible. Wow, and all the ways that unfolded, that's beautiful. So,
Exactly.
when you were mentioning all the what ifs, like, that's huge, not only in grief, but really guilt, especially in mom life, is
It
huge.
is.
So,
Yeah.
how do you suggest what's, like, 1 tip or 2 tips that you can deal with the what ifs to get past it? Because it is something I feel like we deal with that on a daily basis. It's not
We
even
do.
it's just
Yes.
a
My
regular
entire career was built around the boys.
Yeah.
So when I
You have
started in private,
2 boys?
yes. So I have Vincent is my older son and Reed is my younger son. And they're just 3 years apart.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So when I started my private practice in 1982, right in 6 months after Reed was had been born, I built everything around Saturday morning cartoons and whether or not their dad would be home to take care of them late in the afternoon because he was an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah.
So not everybody has that freedom, I'm aware. And so what I'm going to say to your listeners may be very, very different than anything anyone else has said, or maybe you all have figured it out too, is be present with them. And know that when you're absolutely present, not trying to fix them, healthfully parenting them, and playing with them, and nurturing them, that's enough. And I really mean that because when I would take the boys to school, sometimes after Vincent started driving, it was just Reed in the car. We had the best conversations. And one of the things Reed did is he had to, as an 8th grader, have a journal.
Well, yeah.
One of the thing. What is the best thing about your mom? And he said, my mom is the best listener. She always asks me when I get in the car, how are you? And sometimes I'm not very nice and don't say very much, but she always asks and she always listens. So that's what I say. When you, as a mother, are there eye to eye,
Yeah.
hugging them, and they know they're listened to, that's wonderful. So forget the guilt, because you know what guilt is? It's like taking your energy tank, because we all know what that's like, and poking it with a pin so that slowly, the energy drains out. That's what grief is. So stop. I mean, guilt is.
Kind of both.
Yeah, kind of both. Yeah, I've used that analogy with grieving people, Jessica.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's very fitting, and it's really striking as a visual learner as well, like just to see that draining. And it's true. I talk about time management as energy management often, and it's the same thing. If you're too busy worrying about what's next, what else do I have to do? What else is on the plate? Then you're not going to be focused on them. You're not going, and then they're going to be more overwhelming because they want that attention. So it's very true. And I agree. I love our car drives. I feel like I learned so much about them because they're so just, there's nothing for them to do in there. They're encompassed, and it's either talk or listen to music, which also is fun because I see, their personalities come out in their choices. So
Sure.
I think that's great. What do you think then, kind of on the same scale, especially since your husband was also, or their dad was also an entrepreneur, what do you think it is about entrepreneurs that makes us continue through all of those challenges without giving up when things get tough? Because inevitably there are things that pop up that are like, oh my gosh, did not see that coming. Um, and it's kind of a make or break moment sometimes where you're like, it would probably be easier to just go back to my 9 to 5, right? So what is it about entrepreneurs that just makes us go, nope, we're going to keep going. I know that we can do this.
Because within each of us, we're connected to that well-being within. We're connected to that resiliency with passion. We know that there is something for us to do in the world that is uniquely ours. And we're very fortunate in many respects to have that inner sense, because so many people struggle. What is my passion? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Not us.
Yeah. We've got that. The drive is there too. Oh,
Yes,
I
it
love
is.
that. So within that as well, then what is like one overall takeaway or lesson that you think other mompreneurs could use from your particular experience and all of those moments that really legitimized what you do now? For those of you that are unfamiliar, Georgena now has Integrated Wellbeing Institute, which is about finding your well-being within, and she's a grief therapist. So beautiful at it as well. Everything sticks with me. So I know I
Thank
know
you.
you'll take a lot away.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
But what do you
So if you're a therapist listening to this, I invite you to check out the certification program that Jessica has so very wonderfully put online for you, because it teaches you how to listen, to be present in your body, and really, really be able to work with clients in a very different way.
Yeah.
Sorry for the commercial.
No, please, all of the commercials.
So for each of you that are listening as mompreneurs, I'm going to invite you to amp up your self-compassion and give yourself grace. Now, every one of you washes your hands in the bathroom at least once, two, three, four, many times a day, which is the opportunity to connect with yourself in mirror. to look at yourself and say, wow, do you realize what we just got accomplished in the last hour? You are really organized today. Well, we blew that one, but we know we'll have a second chance. That's self-compassion. And it is something that when the critic goes down, the compassion can go up and the love expands. And that's what your kids need and want. That's what your customers need and want. That's what the world needs and wants right now.
That's beautiful. Oh, I love that. And I think what's so special about that too is A, how often do we not look in the mirror when we're in there
Yes,
because we
yes,
don't want to? And
right.
also, you hear so much about self-care that I think it gets misconstrued on what that actually means. And I think self-compassion is a much, much better term because I
Mhm.
really think that's what people mean when they're talking about self-care is
Yes,
that really you just need to fill up your cup in any small way. And that's a beautiful way to do that is to really acknowledge how much you've done already, even if you don't feel like you have.
that's right. That's
I love
right.
that.
And in this moment, you can just simply smile at yourself and say, hey, we're having a good hair day. Or you may say, that's a good shade of lipstick for you. And, because so many women have difficulty loving how they look, loving their body. And so with those, you can find one thing about you that
Yeah.
you like. And you may focus on that too, because I want you all to know this fact. Scientists cannot agree on the number of thoughts we have every day. 12,000, 60,000, they can't figure it out. But what they have figured out is that 80% of those are negative and 95% are repetitive. So every time you can have those affirmations or compliments for yourself, you're in the positive.
And counteracting all of those negatives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So give yourself grace. That
Yes.
advice, that guidance from Georgena Grace.
I love it. And so on that note, what is the best way for others to find you? I will obviously have some links in the description for them to find you on social and on your website, but in case they're just listening, what is a way for them to find you if they would like to either work with you or learn more about what you do or even just connect with you?
Oh, I'd love to have you go to Georgena Grace, the YouTube channel, because there are anxiety antidotes and they've really been helping people. And we all know how much we need that. So you may find me on that, which you'll put the link in, no doubt, Jessica. Thank you. But please go to integratedwellbeinginstitute.com. I regret it, so many letters, but there's a contact on there. Click on that, send me a message, and I will get back to you. We can even have a 10 or 15-minute conversation. If you would like, that's my gift to any of you watching this, to clarify, oh, what was it you really meant? Or are you nuts, Georgena? Really, truly? Or the other thing, if you're a phone person like I am, you may call me. If I'm available, I will answer the phone because it won't come up as spam. It's 503-309-3966. And no doubt Jessica can put that in the links to the information.
Definitely tap into that offer because you won't regret it. Thank you so much, Georgina, for joining us today. I can't even explain to you how excited I was that you said yes, and that you were coming on. I love what you do. I love the way that you express it. You just exude your brand. You are integrated well-being within your institute is 100% you. So I think it is beautiful, and I'm so honored to have you share your story with us. So thank
Thank
you.
you so much for the invitation. And remember, every one of you are doing the best you can. And when we know better, we do better.
Absolutely. I can't say that any better. But your story is very inspirational as always, and your willingness to be open about it. Not only do I appreciate it, but I know everybody else appreciates it, and it is much needed in this space. Just to
Mhm.
hear that after so much loss, you can still recover. You can utilize that, and you can really tap into what your specialty is and share with others so that they don't necessarily have to grieve in the same way that you did. Um,
Mhm.
I think that's
And
beautiful.
yeah, and it's interesting. I'm going to be meeting with an organization that had some significant changes they had to make. And the reason they called me is I had to close the healthcare company in Nebraska. And it wasn't because of Reed's death, it was because the whole industry, Jessica,
Yeah.
changed. And for years and years, I thought I was a terrible businesswoman. And so that's why it's really important for each of you who are listening as mompreneurs to 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 seek out an ear. I'm not saying mine. I'm just saying, is it really true that this or this or this was the decision I made? I have a business coach.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's really, yeah, that is important. I work with 2 coaches actually.
Good.
And yeah, I think it's really, really important to just get that outside perspective because a lot of times what you are interpreting, again, is not always fact. It's more feeling or emotion, and you attach that to it. So having an outside perspective to really give that clarity is really,
Mm,
really important in a lot of ways.
yes.
Um, so for those of you out there facing your own adversity, know that you're not alone. That's why we're doing this. That's the whole purpose of this series and why I bring these experts in really to so you can hear their side of things, hear their perspective, and know that you're not alone. That's what Georgina does too. And then
Mhm.
when you need an extra hand or a mind for brainstorming during your mompreneur journey, we would love to work with you through the Mom Elevated Society. You'll find monthly check-ins for goal setting and assessing, and so much more for both your business and your mom life. And until next time, keep shooting for the stars. Thank you guys.
You'll end.